Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Which is peace on Yahweh's Holy Sabbath Day. Welcome to another holy convocation that Yahweh has enjoined unto us here in Stone Mountain, Georgia. As we know, we are approaching another one of Yahweh's holy days. So as we get to these holy days, we always go over things on that day, but we need to have an understanding about what it is we are doing and what the importance is of those things. What we have been told before was just have faith and the faith and blood of Christ has taken care of everything. And when we get right down to it, there is absolutely nothing worth value that you will ever get without putting any kind of effort whatsoever. So there is effort that is expected of us, and we need to see exactly what kind of effort Yahweh and Yahshua expects from us. But before we get started, brother, would you read the oracles and entreat the angel that stands at the door to come in and sup with us and us with him, that we may make this a holy convocation by the angel's presence.
1 Peter chapter 4, verses 7 through 11. But the end of all things is at hand. Be you therefore sober, and watch unto prayer. And above all things have fervent love among yourselves, for love shall cover the multitude of sins. Use hospitality one to another without grudging. As every man has received the gift, even so minister the same one to another, as good stewards of the manifold grace of Elohim. If any man speak, let him speak as the oracles of Elohim. If any man minister, let him do it as of the ability which Elohim gives, that Elohim in all things may be glorified through Yahshua the Mashiach, to whom be praise and dominion forever and ever. Amen. Ephesians chapter 4, verses 29 through chapter 5 and verse 4. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. And grieve not the Holy Spirit of Elohim, whereby you are sealed until the day of redemption. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. And be you kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as Elohim for Yahshua's sake has forgiven you. Be you therefore followers of Elohim, as dear children, and walk in love, as the Mashiach also have loved us, and has given himself for us an offering and sacrifice to Elohim for a sweet-smelling savor. But fornication and all uncleanness or covetousness, let it not be once named among you as becomes saints. Neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor jesting, which are not convenient, but rather given of thanks. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verses 1 and 2. Keep your foot when you go to the house of Elohim, and be more ready to hear than to give the sacrifice of fools, for they consider not that they do evil. Be not rash with your mouth, and let not your heart be hasty to utter anything before Elohim. For Elohim is in heaven, and you upon earth. Therefore let your words be few. Exodus chapter 23, verses 20 and 21. Behold, I send an angel before you, to keep you in the way, and to bring you into the place which I have prepared. Beware of him, and obey his voice. Provoke him not, for he will not pardon your transgressions, for my name is in him. Revelations chapter 3, verses 20 through 22. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come into him, and will sup with him, and he with me. To him that overcomes will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I have also overcame, and am sat down with my Father in his throne. He that has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says unto the churches.
All right. Now, we will observe our atonement beginning Tuesday night at 9 o'clock. We will begin our service, but your fast should start 7:30, no later than 8 p.m. Tuesday night, We will then break the fast the next day. But we're going to have our Bible study on Wednesday, on the fourth day. We normally have it at 7 o'clock. We're going to have Bible study at 5:30 to 7:30 so that we may break the fast together, those who are around this area. So, and anyone else who is not able to be available for the Bible study, of course it will be recorded, and you can call the recordings line and log on to the internet, and you still will be able to listen to that Bible study. Now, as it is written, can two walk together except they be agreed? There are three that bear record in heaven, the Father, the Word, and the Holy Ghost. There are also three that bear witness in the earth, the Spirit, and the water, and the blood, and these agree in one. This at-one-ment is walking on one accord with the order that Yahweh has set forth for mankind. As stated by Yahshua, I pray for those that believe on me, that they may be one, as the Father art in me, and I in the Father. This at-one-ment is more than the observance of one day. This at-one-ment is accepting Yahweh's complete plan for man's reconciliation. Let's begin today's sermon in Leviticus chapter 23, and we're going to read verses 27 through 32. And today's sermon is entitled At-one-ment. See, this entire story starts with Yahweh and man on one accord. Man, of course, broke that, and then this entire journey is to become at one with Yahweh again. Leviticus chapter 23, and we're going to read verses 27 through 32.
Also on the 10th day of this 7th month there shall be a day of atonement. It shall be an holy convocation unto you, and you shall afflict your souls, and offer an offering made by fire unto Yahweh. And you shall do no work in that same day, for it is a day of atonement, to make an atonement for you before Yahweh your Elohim.
Okay, so we have to understand these are the feasts of Yahweh. On the 10th day of this 7th month, there shall be a day of atonement. This day is separate from the other days. There's a holy convocation, but Yahweh goes further and says, you shall do no work. In the other holy days and in the other days we read where it says, you shall do no servile work. Servile work is work that you get paid for. So you are, on the days that you're not supposed to do any servile work, you're supposed to be off from your regular job, but you can still do some things here and there. When it comes to this day of atonement, Yahweh says you shall do no work, because when we are going through a period of afflicting ourselves, then we kind of then use work to pass the time. See, and we know how that works. When you at work, when you're trying to get off, the day goes slow. When you ain't paying attention to it, it'll go faster. Yahweh doesn't want you to do anything to take your mind off of afflicting your soul on this day of atonement. See, you didn't have to go through the physical pain that Christ had to go through. You didn't have to be sacrificed like these animals who did nothing wrong, by the way. Their blood had to be shed for man's sin. So this one you need to be particularly paying attention to. Now, and we have to deal with this afflict, because there are some teachings out there that say, just keeping the Sabbath is the only afflicting that you're supposed to do. But you have to consider that Yahweh has a Sabbath every week. He didn't call that an affliction. And if you call Yahweh's commandment a grievous thing, then you are definitely not at one with him. But let's look this word up. Afflict is in Strong's, it is H6031, and the word is anah. Now, when we look up that, it says to depress, literally or figuratively, to abase self, afflict, answer, chasten self, deal hardly with, defile, exercise, force, humble, hurt, ravish. Keep all of these things. Submit self. You see how many times self is in there. So this is a self-inflicted situation. Not that somebody else had to humble you. Not that somebody else had to chasten you, but you chasten yourself. So we have to consider the word that is used right there in the original writing, this anah, and what that means when you are afflicting your soul. Go ahead.
Verse 29. For whatsoever soul it be that shall not be afflicted in that same day, he shall be cut off from among his people. And whatsoever soul it be that does any work in that same day, the same soul will I destroy from among his people. You shall do no manner of work. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings.
See, Yahweh is one of repetition because Yahweh knows Israel. He knows that Israel will try to find a loophole, so he automatically repeats himself so that there won't be any other questions. Now we need to deal with this part of affliction so that we can understand what is going on. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 8. So there are a whole lot of things that we have available to us that we take for granted, of course, until the day that it's not available. And sometimes, you think that it takes a whole lot to afflict yourselves. When you get right down to it, you can find the simplest of things that Yahweh uses to afflict us and get our attention. Deuteronomy chapter 8, and let's start that at verse 1.
All the commandments which I command you this day shall you observe to do, that you may live and multiply, and go in and possess the land which Yahweh sware unto your fathers. And you shall remember all the way which Yahweh your Elohim led you these 40 years in the wilderness, to humble you and to prove you, to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or no.
Right. Like I said before, Yahweh have to prove to man that his heart is not right with him. Because man doesn't believe. Man believes something is wrong with everybody else. So he says he led you these 40 years in the wilderness to humble you and prove you, to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or no. Understand, it was a couple days journey where they had to go. They didn't have to be out there 40 years. They had to be out there 40 years to prove to them whether or not they were going to do what Yahweh said. They were constantly going back on what Yahweh commanded. Go ahead.
Verse 3. And he humbled you, and suffered you to hunger, and fed you with manna, which you kneweth not, neither did your fathers know.
Right. So suffering them to hunger was Yahweh proving the children of Israel, removing this abundance of food. This was how so we see this humbling in the beginning. So when we're talking about afflicting ourselves, let's see how Yahweh did it. Go ahead.
That he might make you know that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeded out of the mouth of Yah does man live.
So for Yahweh to make you understand that man does not live by bread alone, he just gave you bread. See, a lot of people go to talking and they go to asking Yahweh for this, that, and the third. You might not like how he answered that. Go ahead.
Your raiment waxed not old upon you, neither did your foot swell these 40 years. You shall also consider in your heart that as a man chasteneth his son, so Yahweh your Elohim chasteneth you.
Now, consider the Hebrew word for afflict, and listen to how many of those you are coming across as we keep reading. Humble, abase, chasten, all of these words. Go ahead.
Therefore you shall keep the commandments of Yahweh your Elohim, to walk in his ways, and to fear him. For Yahweh your Elohim bringeth you into a good land, a land of brooks of water, of fountains and depths that spring out of valleys and hills, a land of wheat and barley, and vines and fig trees and pomegranates, a land of oil, olive, and honey, a land wherein you shall eat bread without scarceness. You shall not lack anything in it, a land whose stones are iron, and out of whose hills you may dig brass.
Now, he's telling them all that, but letting them eat bread. To humble and prove them. Go ahead.
When you have eaten and art full, then you shall bless Yahweh your Elohim for the good land which he has given you. Beware that you forget not Yahweh your Elohim in not keeping his commandments, and his judgments, and his statutes, which I command you this day. Lest when you have eaten and art full, and have built goodly houses and dwelt therein, and when your herds and your flocks multiply, and your silver and your gold is multiplied, and all that you have is multiplied, then your heart be lifted up, and you forget Yahweh your Elohim.
Right. So Yahweh was humbling the children of Israel for the day, saying, I'm going to give you all of these things, but I'm warning you against all of these things, because these things have a tendency to lift up your heart to the point where you won't serve me anymore once you get these things. See, everybody want to be rich and famous, and everybody think, I'm going to be much better when I get rich. And you find out, you look at these documentaries on some of the rich and famous, and they have some of the worst lives ever. And all of them thought the same thing, that money was going to be the end all, answer all, and it ended up being the worst situation for them. Because as they get these things, they get further and further and further away from the Creator. Go ahead.
Which brought you forth out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage, who led you through that great and terrible wilderness, wherein were fiery serpents and scorpions and drought, where there was no water, who brought you forth water out of the rock of flint, who fed you in the wilderness with manna, which your fathers knew not, that he might humble you, and that he might prove you, to do you good at your latter end.
Right. So then we have a extended period where they are eating this manna, this angel's food, but then Yahweh has a holy day called the Feast of Unleavened Bread, where man is to eat unleavened bread for a week. So there's a whole lot that Yahweh has in here that is connected with this whole plan of redemption that we think is just some days that we are observing. Go ahead.
Verse 17, Deuteronomy chapter 8 and verse 17. And you say in your heart, my power and my might of mine hand has gotten me this wealth.
Right. People say, I went to college. I got this doctorate. I got these letters behind my name. I did this. Right. Go ahead.
But you shall remember Yahweh your Elohim, for it is he that giveth you power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant which he sware unto your fathers, as it is this day.
Right. But he's doing that before he gives it to them, so that they understand what they're going to have to fight in their own fleshly heart and mind. I'm telling you what's going to happen once I give you, once your silver and your gold is multiplied, once you have eaten to the full, once you have a nice house. I'm warning you what's going to happen to your heart. There are many people that cannot follow this word because they have those things already, and they say, I don't need to deal with no creator. I created this. Okay, go ahead.
And it shall be, if you do at all forget Yahweh your Elohim, and walk after other gods, and serve them, and worship them, I testify against you this day that you shall surely perish.
And we do that by keeping those holidays. See, what we learned going to church on Sunday was that we didn't have to deal with any of this. You know, the blood of Christ took care of this. But it's amazing. He didn't take care of them holidays, though. But you still go and keep the holidays. You still keep Easter, which has absolutely nothing to do with Christ. This is one of their sun worship signs, which is why most people can't even figure out when Easter is. It is set on the observance of those equinoxes. So they have to wait until the day of Easter come out when they put out the new calendar. So you have all of these things that people will still keep those, not understanding that all of those are worshiping other gods. That is the worship of Ashtaroth, this fertility goddess. So we keep those things, not understanding that this is getting us further and further from Yahweh, when he has ordained a set of holy days. There's 7 days in creation. We got 7 golden candlesticks. Isaiah 11:1 and 2 mentions 7 spirits. And he has these 7 holy days, all of this stuff in line for the reconciliation of man. But man has told us those things don't matter. Go ahead.
Verse 20. As the nations which Yahweh destroyed before your face, so shall you perish, because you would not be obedient unto the voice of Yahweh, your Elohim.
Because you would not be obedient unto the voice of Yahweh, your Elohim. Let's go to Exodus chapter 15. So that we can have some understanding of what these things are. As we went over the things of trumpets, there are a lot of Hebrews that thought that, we just, keep the Feast of Trumpets. It's a memorial of blowing a horn. They missed the whole part where when Yahweh spoke, you heard the horn. They missed the whole part that when the horn blows, the children of Israel move. See, when you hear Yahweh's voice, you ain't supposed to move. Think about how disrespectful it is when your mama said, take out the trash, and you kept sitting there. Now, it's a difference between these new mamas. New mamas, the kids get to sit there for a little while. Old mamas, when they said take out the trash, by the time they said take out the trash, by the time it said shh, you was already supposed to be on your second or third step, picking up that trash, walking toward the outside. So you understand what this horn is. You hear the horn, you start moving. You understand that this trumpet contains the voice of Yahweh. You move when you hear the trumpet. So this is we just didn't keep some day that we just keep a memorial of blowing the trumpets. It means much more than that. See? And it definitely can't be connected to some other thing of what the Jewish people tell us with this Rosh Hashanah. And now the trumpet then becomes a backdrop to something else. Oh, no. You don't put the voice of Yahweh as a backdrop. See? When your mama said something, it wasn't no backdrop. You can't just keep doing. See, these new kids would have got some serious spit slapped out of their mouth. You don't just keep sitting there. Did you not hear your mama say? And Yahweh forbid they had a daddy. And the daddy said that. So there were some things that we are not getting about this whole setup when we go through this. Exodus chapter 15 and verse 23.
And when they came to Marah, they could not drink of the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore the name of it is called Marah. And the people murmured against Moshe, saying, what shall we drink?
So Yahweh not only humbled the children of Israel by holding away food, he then held back water. Go ahead.
And he cried unto Yahweh, and Yahweh showed him a tree, which when he had cast it into the waters were made sweet.
Let me tell you something. All the stuff that they make for medicine, Yahweh has already given us all the medicine in the earth. Man wants to create those things so that they can, first of all, he can mass produce it. then he can have a longer shelf life, which allows him to make more money. That way he can produce it in some poor country where he can get the materials for nothing and then ship it all the way across the world and make a cajillion dollars off of it. That's man's plan. For whatever it is, we have an ailment. Yahweh has already had the cure right here in the earth. We just don't know what it is. But it's in front of you. He showed him, Yahweh didn't make a tree. The tree was already there. You see that? Get this tree, put it in the water gonna be able to be drunk. He didn't make no magical tree. When you go through and look at that story of the Miss Evers boys and that them black folk, the experiment when they was poisoning them all, letting them have syphilis, giving them that syphilis, that Tuskegee experiment. But they had a movie going over it. Some of them were joining the military just so they could get a penicillin shot. This is to this day why a lot of black men do not trust doctors. They were giving them like sugar pills just so they can examine. So there was no medicine. They were letting it harm them, doing all of these things. Now here's the sad part. The whole time they were going through that, the cure was in the kitchen. If you put garlic and vinegar together, let it sit for 1 month with a cloth on top of it, it turns into penicillin. They could have made their own medicine, and they let them all get sick, pass it on to their wives and kids and all of this to experiment on them, and the cure was 10 steps away from them. It says that Yahweh is going to bring the children of Israel out to the wilderness, and it says the lame man shall leap like an hart. That means Yahweh got something out there. All of that stuff that's going to heal everything is sitting right there. He just hadn't told us what it is yet. Go ahead.
There he made for them a statute and an ordinance, and there he proved them. Verse 26. And said, if you will diligently hearken to the voice of Yahweh Elohim, and will do that which is right in his sight, and will give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I'll put none of these diseases upon you, which I have brought upon the Egyptians, for I am Yahweh that healeth you.
Mm-hmm.
And they came to Elam, where were 12 wells of water, and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there by the waters. And they took their journey from Elim, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came unto the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the 2nd month after their departing out of the land of Egypt. And the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moshe and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said unto them, would to Elohim we had died by the hand of Yahweh in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full. For you have brought us forth into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger.
All right, so you see what is on their mind, this eating and drinking, and these are the things that Yahweh is humbling them with. So when you go out on the internet and you find these things, well, these people are saying, atonement has nothing to do with the fast. This book does not agree with that. Go ahead.
Then said Yahweh unto Moshe, behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them whether they will walk in my law or no.
Now consider that. Now he's going to give them this, but then he's still proving them to see how they're going to deal with it. Let's go to Psalms chapter 35. And so you'll learn as you fast that it gives you a certain amount of understanding about fighting the flesh. Because the one thing about hunger is it seems just unbearable. Just, I gotta eat. I just gotta eat. That might happen at 1 o'clock. I gotta eat. I gotta eat. All this flesh is saying you don't eat, you gonna pass out. Oh, you gonna do. That's your flesh trying to convince you. 1:45, you done forgot you were hungry. But if you have to fulfill the flesh every time it raises up against you, you are going to be slayed in this life. This is a memorial about fighting in this whole walk. See, people don't get what this fast is. There's several times in that day that you're going to be hungry. But as it goes away, you're going to look back, and each time it just felt like you weren't going to make it to the next time. And you're like, wow, wait a minute. The more I fight this flesh, the stronger I become. Right? So then Yahweh makes a memorial to remind you of that every year. Because this flesh, it make you forget. That flesh sweet talking. It make you forget by the next year, you don't forgot all the stuff you did last year. You don't forgot all that. So Yahweh got to remind you again. Now, hey, let me remind you about this flesh now. You're going to have to fight it. Because it's going to tell you this. It's going to tell you that. Why you think the adversary tested Yahshua as soon as that baptism happened? He wanted to know, hey, I know you're a spirit, but you don't know nothing about this flesh. You ain't lived in flesh. You created flesh, but you ain't lived in it. So I'm going to test you in this flesh. Go ahead.
Psalms chapter 35 and verse 1. Plead my cause, O Yahweh, with them that strive with me. Fight against them that fight against me. Take hold of shield and buckler, and stand up for mine help. Draw out also the spear, and stop the way against them that persecute me. Say unto my soul, I am your salvation. Let them be confounded and put to shame that seek after my soul. Let them be turned back and brought to confusion that devise my hurt. Let them be as chaff before the wind, and let the angel of Yahweh chase them. Let their way be dark and slippery, and let the angel of Yahweh persecute them. For without a cause have they hid for me their net in a pit, which without cause they have digged for my soul. Let destruction come upon him at unawares, and let his net that he has hid catch himself. Into that very destruction let him fall. And my soul shall be joyful in Yahweh. It shall rejoice in his salvation. All my bones shall say, Yahweh, who is like unto you, which delivereth the poor man from him that is too strong for him? Yes, the poor and the needy from him that spoileth him. False witnesses did rise up. They laid to my charge things that I knew not. They rewarded me evil for good to the spoiling of my soul. But as for me, when they were sick, my clothing was sackcloth. I humbled my soul with fasting.
Now, how did he humble his soul?
With fasting.
Right. I humbled my soul with fasting. Go ahead.
And my prayer returned into mine own bosom. I behaved myself as though he had been my friend or brother. I bowed down heavily as one that mourneth for his mother.
Right. And see, these are the things that we don't consider. It says, verse 13, but as for me, when they were sick, my clothing was sackcloth. If y'all never had a sack of potatoes in that little burlap bag that you carry them potatoes in, put that on one day. See how it feel to you. No, don't put no t-shirt on up under. No. No, that's cheap. That's cheap. Put the burlap sack on. Then you'll see how they are afflicting themselves. So not only is he fasting, then he put on a burlap sack. It itch. It is horrible. He's afflicting himself so that it will be he will put himself in a situation whereby Yahweh will hear his prayer more. So while you're doing this fasting, this is the time to offer up your prayers. Not while you're living in pleasure. Go ahead.
You think about it, you're afflicting yourself within and without because you've got uncomfortable clothing on.
Right. See, we fast and think we doing something. I ain't seen a cat yet show up with a burlap sack on. Go ahead.
Verse 15. But in mine adversary they rejoice.
Adversity.
But in mine adversity they rejoice, and gather themselves together. Yes, the abjects gather themselves together against me. And I knew it not. They did tear me, and cease not. With hypocritical mockers in feasts, they gnashed upon me with their teeth.
Right. It doesn't do us any good to just show up to keep a feast, but then there's no spirit within us to keep it in righteousness. Some people just want a certificate of attendance. I attended. I was there at the feast. But you'll see what Yahweh has to say about that. Go ahead.
Adonai, how long will you look on? Rescue my soul from their destructions, my darling from the lions. I will give you thanks in the great congregation. I'll praise you among much people. Let not them that are mine enemies wrongfully rejoice over me, neither let them wink with the eye that hate me without a cause. For they speak not peace, but they devise deceitful matters against them that are quiet in the land.
Right, for they speak not peace. They may tell you shalom, but they don't really mean you any peace. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 58. Isaiah chapter 58, and we're going to start that at verse 1.
Isaiah chapter 58 and verse 1. Cry aloud, spare not, lift up your voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgression, and the house of Jacob their sins. Yet they seek me daily, and delight to know my ways, as a nation that did righteousness, and forsook not the ordinance of their Elohim. They ask of me the ordinances of justice. They take delight in approaching to Elohim.
Right, they like to hear it. Esau, read us some of that good stuff that Yahweh say. Now we're not going to do none of it, but we love the way it sounds when you read it. Read that stuff, man. Woo, 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 woo. Oh, that stuff sound good. All right, man, I'm going to a party. I'll see you later. What? Where you going? Oh, I got to go with one of these dens of iniquity. We got some stuff we plan on doing. Oh, okay. Right. We ain't going to do none of it. But boy, it sure sound good. Right. Go ahead.
Wherefore have we fasted, say they, and you see it not? Wherefore have we afflicted our souls, and you take it no knowledge? Behold, in the day of your fast you find pleasure, and exact all your labors.
You see why he says you shall not do any work? Okay, in the day of your fast, you find pleasure. See, you still doing all the things that you like, and you exacting all your labors. See, you making sure you pass the time on the day of your fast. See, you're not concentrating on Yahweh. You doing things to keep your mind off Yahweh. Let me go do this over here. That's gonna take about an hour. Let me do this right here. This right here. They're gonna take 2 hours. Now if I go over here, now all of a sudden we very generous. Hey neighbor, didn't you say you wanted somebody to cut your grass? I'm gonna cut your grass. That ought to take about an hour and a half. Now we trying to make this do as much as we can to make that fast time go away. Right. That's why he said, no. I ain't said no servile work. You don't do any work. You ain't gonna pass this time away. Not this one. See, this one is Christ couldn't speed up his suffering to pay for your sin. He couldn't press the fast forward button. No. So neither shall you. Go ahead.
Verse 4. Behold, you fast for strife and debate, and to smite with the fist of wickedness. You shall not fast as you do this day, to make your voice to be heard on high. Is it such a fast that I have chosen? A day for a man to afflict his soul?
Right, and if we look up the afflict that is right here, it's going to give us the same H6031 Anah that we read before, which is chasten, deal hardly with, humble, chasten, the very words that we read before this is the very same thing that Yahweh is dealing with the children of Israel about, afflicting themselves, and he's mentioning that with the fast. Go ahead.
Is it to bow down his head as a bulrush and to spread sackcloth and ashes under him? Will you call this a fast, an acceptable day to Yahweh?
Because then, now it comes, it's now about the show. Remember what Yahshua said. In the day that you fast, don't wash your face and anoint your head with oil. Don't go and disfigure your face so that you appear unto men to fast. So they ask you, what you doing? Oh, I'm fasting. I'm so famished. Oh, right. So you already got your reward. You got your reward among men. Now everybody know you fasting. You going around telling everybody, how you doing? I'm fasting. Hey, how you doing? I'm fasting. How you doing? I'm fasting. What? So now you got a trumpet and you just sounding about, oh, I'm doing some great works. Wait a minute, put the trumpet down. Don't sound a trumpet before you do your work. Nobody should even be able to look at you and know you fasting. They offer you something, no thank you. Ain't nobody got it. You don't have to go through the whole, well, you know, I fast such and such, and I'm in the middle of some very holy things which you wouldn't know anything about. Look here, no. All that ain't necessary. No, thank you. And you keep it moving. Go ahead.
Isaiah chapter 58 and verse 6. Is not this the fast that I have chosen? To loose the bands of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, and to let the oppressed go free. And that you break every yoke.
Right. So this fast and is supposed to be a point where you're learning to fight this flesh. So then he has all of these other things. So you say, wait a minute, how you have all of this in a fast? Because the fast is supposed to remind you about fighting the flesh. These are all things of the flesh. Undoing these heavy burdens. Hey, you make money putting an heavy yoke on your neighbor, doing all of these things. Fight that fleshly desire to get more than you're supposed to have. Go ahead.
Is it not to deal your bread to the hungry, and that you bring the poor that are cast out to your house? When you seek the naked, that you cover him, and that you hide not yourself from your own flesh.
Remember what Yahshua said in his parable. He's going to say to them, when I was hungry, you fed me not. When I was naked, you clothed me not. When I was didn't have a place to stay, you didn't take me in. When I saw you and you was hungry and I didn't feed you. When you did it to them, you did it to me. What? See, that takes care of that respect the persons thing. See, we want to do good to people who have status. But people who do not have status, we're not as motivated to do good by those people. That's why he said, be careful, because some of you have entertained angels unawares. See? Now how you gonna speak for that at the day of judgment, that you done been nasty to an angel of Yahweh because you didn't know who they were? Go ahead.
Verse 8. Then shall your light break forth as the morning, and your health shall spring forth speedily, and your righteousness shall go before you. The glory of Yahweh shall be your reward. Then shall you call, and Yahweh shall answer. You shall cry, and he shall say, here I am. If you take away from the midst of you the yoke, the putting forth of the finger, and speaking vanity, and if you draw out your soul to the hungry, and satisfy the afflicted soul, then shall your light rise in obscurity, and your darkness be as the noonday.
Right. He says, and if you take away from the midst of you the yoke, the putting forth of the finger, and speaking vanity. Remember when they said, we have caught this woman in the very act of adultery. Now, It is impossible for them to catch the woman in adultery by herself. They didn't have not now man with them. Now these were seasoned brothers in the word that so-called wanted to see if Yahshua would condemn this woman. We have caught this woman in the very act. Okay. Well, which one of y'all dudes was she with then? Because I don't see no man. So who was she committing adultery with? So you already have come with hypocrisy, because where's the guy? Right. Go ahead.
Verse 11. And Yahweh shall guide you continually, and satisfy your soul in drought, and make fat your bones, and you shall be like a watered garden, and like a spring of water, whose waters fail not. And they that shall be of you shall build the old waste places. You shall rise up the foundations of many generations, and you shall be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of paths to dwell in. If you turn away your foot from the Sabbath, from doing your pleasure on my holy day.
Right. If you turn away your foot from the Sabbath, if your foot on the Sabbath, you're stepping on it. You have defiled the Sabbath. Now, how did you defile the Sabbath? By doing your pleasure on his day. So people got all kind of stuff that they like to do. The Sabbath ain't your day. You need to find another day to do that stuff you like. See, people forget that when we talk about keeping the Sabbath and what the Sabbath is, from even to even. Why are you seeking out your pleasure on Yahweh's holy Sabbath day? See, we want to be grown. But when it come down to doing grown folk stuff, hey, them toys and stuff in there, them for the kids. Them ain't for grown people. See, even for kids, Yahweh ain't even put that weight on them. That's forever. You tell a kid to sit in the corner for 15 minutes. To them, that's saying, I've been in this corner all day long. It's been 15 minutes, man. Calm down. But their little heartbeat move fast. Wait, but if y'all grown, y'all don't need nothing to pass the time. Y'all grown. Go ahead.
And call the Sabbath a delight, the holy of Yahweh, honorable, and shall honor him, not doing your own ways, nor finding your own pleasure, nor speaking your own words. Then shall you delight yourself in Yahweh.
Then shall you delight yourself in Yahweh. See, you're not delighting yourself in Yahweh saying, oh, we keeping the Sabbath, we keeping the holy days, but you do everything you want to do. See, that's why folks like to have them be a part of them gatherings. See, I don't have to be a part of no congregation, I be a part of a gathering. So that way, they can do it however they want to do it. There's nobody responsible, and everybody can do whatever they want to do. They just look like they keeping something holy, and they ain't going on about their business in the next 15, 20 minutes. Go ahead.
And I will cause you to ride upon the high places of the earth, and feed you with the heritage of Jacob your father, for the mouth of Yahweh hath spoken it.
All right, let's go to Genesis chapter 22. So we see that this fast, Yahweh just ordains this fast, but that doesn't mean that's the you can fast on your own at any time. This is a fast that he has ordained. But if man finds himself facing some issues, you fast to afflict yourself before Yahweh and humble yourself before Yahweh. When you find that there were situations and circumstances that these people in this book found themselves in, they fasted. Some of them fasted for days. We have a hard time fasting a day because we have fast food where you just drive through. You ain't got to get out your car. You can stay in your car and get fed. Yeah, let me get number 2 supersize that, please. Thank you. 713, drive to the window. You ain't even have to get out your car. Do you understand what had to happen in these old days for somebody to eat? So we don't consider any of that. We're so used to it that it doesn't mean anything. Genesis chapter 22, and let's read verses 1 through 13.
And it came to pass after these things that Elohim did tempt Abraham, and said unto him, Abraham. And he said, Behold, here I am. And he said, Take now your son, your only son Esau, whom you loveth, and get you into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell you of.
Right. Now, this is definitely a tempting and proving move. Take your only son and offer him up. Now that's pretty heavy. Go ahead.
And Abraham rose up early in the morning, and saddled his ass, and took 2 of his young men with him, and Esau his son, and clave the wood for the burnt offering, and rose up, and went on to the place of which Elohim had told him. Then on the 3rd day Abraham lifted up his eyes, and saw the place afar off.
Right, and it's not a coincidence that this is 3 days. It's a 3-day separation. It's a 3-day sanctification period. Go ahead.
And Abraham said unto his young men, Abide you here with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship, and come again to you.
Right. Now, Yahweh has told him to come and sacrifice this boy. Now, you know he got an issue with this, yet he says the 3rd day, look, you stay here, and I and the lad will go and worship and come again. He done told me about the promises that he gonna do with this boy. I got faith that one way or another, he gonna give me this boy back. Now, I don't know if it's right now. I don't know if it's later. I don't know how he gonna do it. But I know me and this boy coming back one way or another. Go ahead.
And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering, and laid it upon Esau his son. And he took the fire in his hand, and a knife, and they went both of them together. And Esau spake unto Abraham his father, and said, My father. And he said, Here I am, my son. And he said, Behold the fire and the wood, but where's the lamb for a burnt offering? And Abraham said, My son, Elohim will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. So they went both of them together. And they came to the place which Elohim had told him of. And Abraham built an altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Esau his son.
So even as he is being obedient, he still has to go through all the process of doing each one of these steps. Go ahead.
And laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand, and took the knife to slay his son. And the angel of Yahweh called unto him out of heaven, and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Lay not your hand upon the lad, neither do you anything unto him. For now I know that you feareth Elohim.
Right. See, when you fear Elohim, you do what he say do. See, this is where people get it twisted when we talk about fear. They talk about a different kind of fear. See, this fear is respect. See, you respect your father. Your father said, Hey, son, get up here. Let's go and go do such and such. For the fear and respect you have for your father, you get up and move. When the police say, when they put that siren on, you pull over. You respect their power. Go ahead.
Seeing you have not withholden your son, your only son, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket by his horns.
Right. A ram caught in the thicket by his horns. So this is the substitute offering that is given in the stead of the son. So, brother, pass me that. So you have, first of all, we just had the holy day of trumpets to begin the 7th month. Then you have this that was given. Esau is in representation of Christ. So he's giving him this story. This is the way this story is starting out. Now, he has caught a ram, and a ram is a full-grown male lamb. So when you see this lamb stuff, don't get thrown off when then you see a ram. This is the male lamb with horns. He is caught by his horns. So when we blow the shofar, this is why we should be blowing a ram's horn. The ram is what is caught here. This is the substitute that was given to sacrifice. When we see most Hebrew congregations, they have this long horn. That is a kadu, which is a basically an antelope. Those are wild animals. Those animals are not offered upon Yahweh's altar. Finish that up, brother.
And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering in the stead of his son.
All right, now let's go to Exodus chapter 29. So we can find out a little bit more about this ram. So remember, you have the Feast of Trumpets that began this month. It's a memorial of blowing of trumpets. The ram that was given for Isaac was caught by its horns. What make you think you should use any other horn? Now let's see just how important this ram is as we start to talk about this at-one-ment with Yahweh. Exodus chapter 29, and let's start that at verse 1.
And this is the thing that you shall do unto them to hallow them, to minister unto me in the priest's office. Take 1 young bullock and 2 rams without blemish. And unleavened bread, and cakes unleavened tempered with oil, and wafers unleavened anointed with oil. Of wheaten flour shall you make them. And you shall put them into 1 basket, and bring them in the basket with the bullock and the 2 rams.
So a bullock and 2 rams are used to hallow them to minister unto the priest's office. So it's not a coincidence that you then have this ram caught in the thicket way before now. See, Yahweh sets up things even though he hasn't explained those things to man. Go ahead.
And Aaron and his sons you shall bring unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and shall wash them with water. And you shall take the garments, and put upon Aaron the coat, and the robe of the ephod, and the breastplate, and gird him with the curious girdle of the ephod. And you shall put the mitre upon his head, and put the holy crown upon the mitre.
Right, so the high priest has 2 head coverings. Go ahead.
Then shall you take the anointing oil, and pour it upon his head, and anoint him. And you shall bring his sons, and put coats upon them. And you shall gird them with girdles, Aaron and his sons, and put the bonnets on them. And the priest's office shall be theirs for a perpetual statute. And you shall consecrate Aaron and his sons.
All right, and the rest of the priests had 1 head covering, the bonnet. Go ahead.
And you shall cause a bullock to be brought before the tabernacle of the congregation. And Aaron and his sons shall put their hands upon the head of the bullock. And you shall kill the bullock before Yahweh by the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And you shall take of the blood of the bullock, and put it upon the horns of the altar with your finger, and pour all the blood beside the bottom of the altar.
All right, you take the blood of the bullock and put it upon the horns or the corners or the peak of the altar with your finger, and pour all the blood beside the bottom of the altar. Go ahead.
And you shall take all the fat that covereth the inwards, and the caul that is above the liver, and the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is upon them, and burn them upon the altar. But the flesh of the bullock, and his skin, and his dung, shall you burn with fire without the camp. It is a sin offering. You shall also take 1 ram, and Aaron and his sons shall put their hands upon the head of the ram. And you shall slay the ram, and you shall take his blood, and sprinkle it around about upon the altar. And you shall cut the ram in pieces, and wash the inwards of him, and his legs, and put them onto his pieces, and onto his head.
All right, so 1 ram's blood is sprinkled round the altar. Go ahead.
And you shall burn the whole ram upon the altar. It is a burnt offering unto Yahweh. It is a sweet savor, an offering made by fire unto Yahweh. And you shall take the other ram, and Aaron and his sons shall put their hands upon the head of the ram. Then shall you kill the ram, and take of his blood, and put it upon the tip of the right ear of Aaron, and upon the tip of the right ear of his sons, and upon the thumb of the right hand, and upon the great toe of their right foot, and sprinkle the blood upon the altar round about.
Right. So now the second ram, you then take that blood, put it on the tip of the right ear of the sons, upon the thumb of the right hand, and upon the great toe of the right foot. So then, as the children of Israel are to hear, their hand is supposed to do this work, their foot is supposed to walk, and all of this is consecrated by this ram's blood. Go ahead.
Verse 21. And you shall take the blood, and you shall take of the blood that is upon the altar, and of the anointing oil, and sprinkle it upon Aaron, and upon his garments.
So not only was Aaron and the sons sanctified by the ram's blood, but the garments, the clothing that they wear. Remember when all the pastors used to wear robes? Right. That's before them fancy Italian suits came out. Boy, when they got them fancy Italian suits, the robe came off, Jack. The robe came off. Nobody can't wear that robe no more. You can't see that $1,000 suit. Right. Go ahead.
And upon his sons, and upon the garments of his sons with him. And he shall be hallowed, and his garments, and his sons' garments with him. Also you shall take of the ram the fat and the rump, and the fat that covereth the inwards, and the caul above the liver, and the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is upon them, and the right shoulder, for it is a ram of consecration. And 1 loaf of bread, and 1 cake of oiled bread, and 1 wafer out of the basket of the unleavened bread that is before Yahweh. And you shall put all in the hands of Aaron, and in the hands of his sons, and shall wave them for a wave offering before Yahweh. And you shall receive them of their hands, and burn them upon the altar for a burnt offering, for a sweet savor before Yahweh. It is an offering made by fire unto Yahweh. And you shall take the breast of the ram of Aaron's consecration, and wave it for a wave offering before Yahweh, and it shall be your part. And you shall sanctify the breast of the wave offering, and the shoulder of the heave offering, which is waved, and which is heaved up, of the ram of the consecration, even of that which is for Aaron, and of that which is for his sons.
All right, let's go to Numbers chapter 15. So that we understand the importance of this ram, so that we understand that this Lamb of Elohim, you find when you go through that there are several positions that Yahshua has to play when we look back at this law. For Yahweh had Yahshua fulfilling this law, this sacrificial law. So there were certain things that had to be done.
Numbers chapter 15 and verse 1. And Yahweh spake unto Moshe, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When you be come into the land of your habitations, which I give unto you, and will make an offering by fire unto Yahweh, a burnt offering, or a sacrifice in performing a vow, or in a freewill offering, or in your solemn feast, to make a sweet savor unto Yahweh, of the herd or of the flock, then shall he that offereth his offering unto Yahweh bring a meat offering of a 10th deal of flour mingled with the 4th part of an hin of oil. And the 4th part of an hin of wine for a drink offering shall you prepare with the burnt offering or sacrifice for 1 lamb.
Right. Now people will tell you, well, you can't drink no wine because, we holy. So we're going to separate the wine and we're going to put grape juice in there. For they being ignorant of Elohim's righteousness and going about to establish their own. See, they want to be righteous in the eyes of man, so they have to play these little pretend games. as we see, the priesthood followed what? Aaron and his sons. Yet what they have today, they say the Pope, they take a vow, a celibacy. They won't be with any woman whatsoever. The priesthood follows sons. How you gonna have sons if you're not married? But they being ignorant of Elohim's righteousness and have gone about to establish their own. See? So they're going to look holy. Go ahead.
Verse 6. Or for a ram, you shall prepare for a meat offering 2/10 deals of flour mingled with the third part of an hin of oil. And for a drink offering, you shall offer the third part of an hin of wine for a sweet savor unto Yahweh.
All right, now we're going to skip down to verse 17, but the point you got to get is the larger the offering, the larger the amount of wine you're supposed to bring with it. Go ahead.
Numbers chapter 15 and verse 17. And Yahweh spake unto Moshe, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When you come into the land whither I bring you, then it shall be that when you eat of the bread of the land, you shall offer up an heave offering unto Yahweh. You shall offer up a cake of the first of your dough for an heave offering. As you do the heave offering of the threshing floor, so shall you heave it. Of the first of your dough you shall give unto Yahweh an heave offering in your generations. And if you have erred, and not observed all these commandments, which Yahweh hath spoken unto Moshe, even all that Yahweh hath commanded you by the hand of Moshe, from the day that Yahweh commanded Moshe, and henceforward among your generations, then it shall be, if aught be committed by ignorance without the knowledge of the congregation, that all the congregation shall offer one young bullock for a burnt offering, for a sweet savor unto Yahweh, with his meat offering and his drink offering, according to the manner, and one kid of the goats for a sin offering.
Now, it shall be if aught be committed by ignorance. Now, when we look at what ignorance is, that word in Strong's is H7684, and it is a mistake or inadvertent transgression, error, unawares, unwittingly. So that does not include when you decide to sin and you already knew what it is you were doing. Go ahead.
Verse 25. And the priest shall make an atonement for all the congregation of the children of Israel, and it shall be forgiven them, for it is ignorance. And they shall bring their offering, a sacrifice made by fire unto Yahweh, and their sin offering before Yahweh for their ignorance. And it shall be forgiven all the congregation of the children of Israel, and the stranger that sojourneth among them, seeing all the people were in ignorance. And if any soul sin through ignorance, then he shall bring a she-goat of the first year for a sin offering.
Now, this is a personal, and if any soul, before, that was the congregation does something out of order, then there were sacrifices for that. Now, if any soul sin through ignorance, then he shall bring a she-goat of the first year for a sin offering. Go ahead.
And the priest shall make an atonement for the soul that sinneth ignorantly, when he sinneth by ignorance before Yahweh, to make an atonement for him, and it shall be forgiven him. You shall have one law for him that sinneth through ignorance, both for him that is born among the children of Israel, and for the stranger that sojourneth among you. But the soul that does aught presumptuously, whether he be born in the land or a stranger, the same reproacheth Yahweh, and that soul shall be cut off from among his people.
Right. So you have this thing of atonement, but we have to consider these presumptuous sins are something altogether different. And when we deal with this whole thing of atonement, that word is kafar. It is H3722, and it is to cancel, appease, to cleanse, disannul, forgive, be merciful, pacify, pardon, to purge away, put off, and finally reconcile or reconciliation. So this is bringing you back to the point of where you're supposed to be with Yahweh. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 5.
Leviticus chapter 5 and verse 1. And if a soul sin, and hear the voice of swearing, and is a witness, whether he has seen or known of it, if he do not utter it, then he shall bear his iniquity. Or if a soul touch any unclean thing, whether it be a carcass of an unclean beast, or a carcass of unclean cattle, or the carcass of unclean creeping things, and if it be hidden from him, he also shall be unclean and guilty. Or if he touch the uncleanness of man, whatsoever uncleanness it be, that a man shall be defiled withal, and it be hid from him, when he knoweth of it, then he shall be guilty.
Now this is where people like to hide, right here. When he knows of it, then he shall be guilty. So people say, oh, I don't want to know. Don't tell me about that word, that stuff you talking about. Because see, since I don't know, I'm not guilty. See, because I don't know of it, I'm not guilty. Right. And the angel of Yahweh, when they get ready to say, you know, at their judgment, hey, I'm not guilty. I didn't know. Then here come that angel. Oh yeah, I'll testify. Yeah, they had about 5 or 6 complete books just scattered throughout their house, Yahweh. So they definitely had the words of life in their house, but they spent most of their time dealing with the dead. They was on that book all day. They was watching that television all day. They was on all of them things. They was texting back and forth all day, but they had the words of life. They just decided not to read them. Hey, guilty as charged. How you gonna claim ignorance when you had the words of life there, but you didn't seek out understanding? See? And there are people that are being taught. I just heard a televangelist say, God don't go against you or require anything of you that he hadn't put in you first. So he can't require that of you. But see, that's why he got 5,000 members and he can get personal jets, because they like to hear those lies. And people pay big money for you to lie to them. People pay big money to hear those really nice stories that basically end in them not having to change anything about themselves, yet being able to get salvation and all the wonderful things that walking in this word offers. That's what it's all about. Something for nothing. Go ahead.
Leviticus chapter 5 and verse 4. Or if a soul swear, pronouncing with his lips to do evil, or to do good, whatsoever it be that a man shall pronounce with an oath, and it be hid from him, when he knoweth of it, then he shall be guilty in one of these. And it shall be, when he shall be guilty in one of these things, that he shall confess that he has sinned in that thing. And he shall bring his trespass offering unto Yahweh for his sin which he has sinned, a female from the flock, a lamb or a kid of the goats, for a sin offering. And the priest shall make an atonement for him concerning his sin. And if he be not able to bring a lamb, then he shall bring for his trespass which he hath committed 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons unto Yahweh, one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering.
So when you deal with this, and he shall bring his trespass offering unto Yahweh for his sin which he has sinned, a female from the flock. So you find when you're dealing with these things, understand, in the beginning, man, his first excuse was what? It was this woman you gave me. All right, now every time you sin, bring a female. Go ahead, bring a female and sacrifice one of those animals, because that was the first excuse you brought to me. It was this woman you gave me. She did, and then that's why, because right. But I gave you the instructions. I didn't give her instructions. I gave them to you. So that was your first excuse. You're going to ride that excuse out. Go ahead.
Verse 8. And he shall bring them unto the priest, who shall offer that which is for the sin offering first, and wring off his head from his neck, but shall not divide it asunder. And he shall sprinkle of the blood of the sin offering upon the side of the altar, and the rest of the blood shall be wrung out at the bottom of the altar. It is a sin offering. And he shall offer the second for a burnt offering according to the manner. And the priest shall make an atonement for him for his sin which he hath sinned, and it shall be forgiven him. But if he be not able to bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, then he that had sinned shall bring of his offering the 10th part of an ephah of fine flour for a sin offering.
Jump to verse 15.
If a soul commit a trespass and sin through ignorance in the holy things of Yahweh, then he shall bring for his trespass unto Yahweh a ram without blemish out
Now
of the
when
flocks.
it comes down to holy things, you got to bring a ram, which is a male, without blemish. So it's different when you start dealing with the holy things. Go ahead.
With your estimation by shekels of silver, after the shekel of the sanctuary, for a trespass offering.
So you seeing in holy things, you got to bring a ram that has one of them horns right there that we blow to gather the congregation. See, people think that we just do stuff just to be doing stuff. No, there's a reason why we do things a certain way. Go ahead.
Verse 16. And he shall make amends for the harm that he has done in the holy thing, and shall add the 5th part thereto, and give it unto the priest. And the priest shall make an atonement for him with the ram of the trespass offering, and it shall be forgiven him.
All right. He shall add the 5th part thereto, and give it unto the priest, and the priest shall make atonement for him with the ram of the trespass offering. Go ahead.
And if a soul sin, and commit any of these things which are forbidden to be done by the commandments of Yah, though he knew it not, yet is he guilty, and shall bear his iniquity.
Right. The same thing they're going to tell you if you go down downtown to the court. Your Honor, I didn't know it was illegal to drive 75 in a 35. He said ignorance of the law is no excuse. Here go your fine. Your Honor, I didn't even see a speeding sign. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. That's not your excuse. You can't go in the courtroom saying you didn't know it was a law. They don't care. Ignorance of the law is not an excuse. But you have people that are using that saying, well, we were not taught this, so, I'm held, I'm protected by the veil of ignorance. Well, did you seek after it the same way you sought after silver and gold? Because if we working at a place and they don't pay enough money, we like, I'm going to fill out some other applications. This place here, I need some more money. Did you go after your salvation like that? You know what? This don't sound right. All they doing is shouting and dancing. I need to figure out something, so I learn something about what the Creator wants. Right. Go ahead.
Verse 18. And he shall bring a ram without blemish out of the flock, with your estimation, for a trespass offering unto the priest. And the priest shall make an atonement for him concerning his ignorance wherein he erred and knew it not, and it shall be forgiven him.
Right. And see, a lot of people are believing that, we can't keep these holy days because there are sacrifices in these holy days. Yahshua has taken care of all those sacrifices. So then those holy days are still to be kept. But then there's a priest that makes atonement. So when you're a part of one of those gatherings, who doing the spiritual offering there? Well, you can just kick it. You ain't got to really follow nothing. How that work? Go ahead.
It is a trespass offering. He hath certainly trespassed against Yahweh.
All right. Let's go to Romans chapter 5. Romans chapter 5, and let's start that at verse 1.
Therefore, being justified by faith, we have peace with Elohim through our Adonai Yahshua the Mashiach, by whom also we have access by faith in this grace wherein we stand, and rejoice in hope of the glory of Elohim. And not only so, but we glory in tribulations also, knowing that tribulation worketh patience. And patience, experience, and experience, hope. And hope maketh not ashamed, because the love of Elohim is shed abroad in our hearts by the Holy Ghost, which is given unto us.
Verse 3, and not only so, but we glory in tribulations. See, now you are taking a part in that sacrifice in the things that we encounter. Knowing that tribulation, the trouble that we encounter, worketh patience. See? It takes a while. When I first got in this word, whatever 0 is, I had less than that when it comes to patience. But I tell you what, you go through enough stuff, you'll develop some patience. The same stuff that used to bother me, that stuff don't bother me no more. The same stuff that used to make me hit the roof, now it's got to happen several times before it make me hit the roof. That's that working of your patience. See? That's one of them, the Spirit work on you. Go ahead.
For when we were yet without strength, in due time Christ died for the ungodly. For scarcely for a righteous man will one die, yet peradventure for a good man some would even dare to die. But Elohim commendeth his love toward us, in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Much more than, being now justified by his blood.
Much more than being now justified by his blood. So all of those sacrifices that we have read about, we are now justified through his blood. So he is taking care of those sacrifices. That's why we can still keep those days. So you have to be careful. There are going to be some people that are going to tell you, you can't keep those holy days because we not in the land. You can't keep those holy days because those things got sacrifices connected to it. Right. And Christ has fulfilled those. So we don't come to sacrifice any animals when we keep our holy days. When we keep Passover, the lamb we eat, it ain't our sacrifice. Yahshua was our sacrifice. I'm eating lamb because it's tender and delicious. Read.
We shall be saved from wrath through him. For if, when we were enemies, we were reconciled to Elohim by the death of his Son, much more, being reconciled, we shall be saved by his life. And not only so, but we also joy in Elohim through our Adonai Yahshua the Mashiach, by whom we have now received the atonement.
Verse 12.
Wherefore, as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin, and so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned. For unto the law sin was in the world, but sin is not imputed when there is no law. Nevertheless, death reigned from Adam to Moshe, even over them that had not sinned after the similitude of Adam's transgression, who is the figure of him that was to come. But not as the offense, so also is the free gift. For if through the offense of one many be dead, much more the grace of Elohim, and the gift by grace, which is by one man, Yahshua the Mashiach, hath abounded unto many.
Right. Through this one sacrifice, we have then been cleared of having to do this animal sacrifice and the shedding of blood to cause this atonement for sin. Because it was never possible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away the sin of man. It always needed to be a man. But Yahweh gave us this schoolmaster to hold us until this sacrifice was found. So now we have Yahshua to take that place. So we understand that he has set forth this path, but we can't deal with that any old type of way. Keep reading.
Verse 16. And not as it was by one that sinned, so is the gift. For the judgment was by one to condemnation. But the free gift is of many offenses unto justification. For if by one man's offense death reigned by one, much more they which receive abundance of grace and of the gift of righteousness shall reign in life by one, Yahshua the Mashiach. Therefore, as by the offense of one judgment came upon all men to condemnation, even so by the righteousness of one the free gift came upon all men unto justification of life. For as by one man's disobedience many were made sinners, so by the obedience of one shall many be made righteous. Moreover, the law entered, that the offense might abound. But where sin abounded, grace did much more abound.
Right. So there was this law of sin and death. Wherever there was sin, there then must be the death of some animal, because it takes blood to make an atonement for sin. But now, being justified through Yahshua's blood, that is no longer a part that is put over on us. Can you imagine in these days and times, with all the people that are on the earth, if we turned around and sacrificed an animal every time we sin? Do you understand them folks would be gathering up all of us and killing us? Man, these folks killing us, they ain't even eating the food. They only eating parts of it. We can kill them all, man. We losing too much food with these people. Go ahead.
Verse 21. That as sin has reigned unto death, even so might grace reign through righteousness unto eternal life by Yahshua the Mashiach, our Adonai. What shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin, that grace may abound?
Right. People say, well, hey, we ain't got no more law. No, that's a law of animal sacrifice. That has nothing to do with the dietary and moral law code. It still says what? See, people take this out of context when they say, love Yahweh thy Elohim with all thy heart, mind, and soul, and then thy neighbor as thyself. You got to go into this book to figure out how to love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, mind, and soul. See? You're going to have people tell you, well, you can't do that unless he put it in you. So now you can just be ignorant, whatever, and you protect it until the day you find out. So if you give them that loophole, then what? Now you understand why they say, oh, no, I don't want to know. Don't tell me. Don't tell me. See, some of the people are not wanting to not hear your word because they don't believe it. They don't want to hear it because they don't want to be held accountable. So they believe if they block you out when you start telling them that they are protected by the veil of ignorance. Oh, no, don't tell me. Don't tell me. I need to have a pure heart when I stand before judgment. So don't tell me. You already missing now, because that ain't going to work. Go ahead.
Romans chapter 6 and verse 2. Elohim forbid. How shall we that are dead to sin live any longer therein? Know you not that so many of us as were baptized into Yahshua the Mashiach were baptized into his death?
Right. Baptized into his death, baptized in the name of Yahshua. See, by throwing this fake Greek name in here, there are many people that have been baptized in the wrong name. According to as it is written, there's one name under heaven by which men must be saved. And we know that name is not Jesus. Go ahead.
Therefore we are buried with him by baptism into death, that like as Christ was raised up from the dead by the glory of the Father, even so we also should walk in newness of life.
Right. That baptism is supposed to be us being born again. But what you find is people get baptized, they're supposed to be born again, but then they still let that old man shine through. They still let that old man make those decisions, because there's certain things that they like about that old life, and they really don't want to be completely reborn. They want to be half born, because they still like that old life. So they got one live side and one dead side. So they show up on the Sabbath, they show you their live side. They turn on, you need to get this is my good side. Well, what's that other side? Oh, that's my dead side. I don't show that till I go out at night. Right. You know the freaks come out at night. Right. That's your nighttime side. Oh, I see. Go ahead.
Verse 5. For we have been planted together in the likeness of his death. We shall be also in the likeness of his resurrection. Knowing this, that our old man is crucified with him.
If we let the old man be crucified with him. See? That's why some people cannot follow this word. They start hearing this word, and they figure, oh, now I got a problem with that brother. No, you got a problem with this word. This word, because you like that old man, you have a problem with this word. You have a problem with me. Esau been Israel didn't write this stuff. Go ahead.
That the body of sin might be destroyed, that henceforth we should not serve sin. For he that is dead is freed from sin. Now if we be dead with the Mashiach, we believe that we shall also live with him, knowing that the Mashiach being raised from the dead dieth no more. Death hath no more dominion over him. For in that he died unto sin once, but in that he liveth unto Elohim. Likewise, reckon you also yourselves to be dead indeed unto sin, but alive unto Elohim through Yahshua the Mashiach, our Adonai. Let not sin therefore reign in your mortal body, that you should obey it in the lust thereof.
Now, what we have to consider here, and this is clearly stated in the New Testament, people try to convince us that the law is nailed to the cross, and they encompass everything in the word law, because they don't like the word law, because they don't like order. But he says, let not sin therefore reign in your mortal body. When we deal with what sin is the transgression of the law. So if the law was nailed to the cross, there would never be any more sin. Period. The fact that there is still sin after Christ takes care of that lie that people are telling, that the law is nailed to the cross. If the law is nailed to the cross, then that means there is no sin. If all the law is nailed to the cross. This is the law of animal sacrifice, because he came to fulfill the law. He didn't fulfill adultery because he didn't commit it. He didn't fulfill lying because he didn't lie. He didn't fulfill stealing because he didn't steal. He fulfilled animal sacrifice because he was sacrificed. Go ahead.
Romans chapter 6 and verse 13. Neither yield you your members as instruments of unrighteousness unto sin, but yield yourselves unto Elohim as those that are alive from the dead, and your members as instruments of righteousness unto Elohim. For sin shall not have dominion over you, for you are not under the law, but under grace.
You are not under the law of animal sacrifice, but under the grace of Yahshua. Through his blood, he has become the perfect sacrifice. That in no way tells you that you can go out and go and steal something. That's dealing with animal sacrifice. Go ahead.
What then? Shall we sin because we are not under the law, but under grace? Elohim forbid.
Right. So they said, wait a minute. So you mean tell me I ain't got to sacrifice no animal if I sin? Boy, I'm finna go sin tomorrow. He said, no, so you already taking care of it. No. No, that's not what that means. Because the whole part is to activate your conscience. Go ahead.
Know you not that to whom you yield yourselves servants to obey, his servants you are to whom you obey, whether of sin unto death or of obedience unto righteousness. But Elohim be thanked that you were the servants of sin, but you have obeyed from the heart that form of doctrine which was delivered you. Being then made free from sin, you became the servants of righteousness. I speak after the manner of men because of the infirmity of your flesh. For as you have yielded your members servants to uncleanness and to iniquity unto iniquity, even so now yield your members servants to righteousness unto holiness. For when you were the servants of sin, you were free from righteousness. What fruit had you then in those things whereof you are now ashamed?
Right, but are you ashamed? The new man is ashamed. The old man ain't ashamed. So that's what hinders people from being able to do these things in righteousness. The old man won't let them be ashamed. The old man ain't ashamed. The old man love to hang out and do all the ungodly things that ungodly people do. They ain't ashamed. Go ahead.
For the end of those things is death. But now being made free from sin and become servants to Elohim, you have your fruit unto holiness and the end of everlasting life. For the wages of sin is death.
The wages, which is payment of sin, singular, is death. Not the wages of sins. For the wages, payment of sin is death. Go ahead.
But the gift of Elohim is eternal life through Yahshua the Mashiach, our Adonai.
But the gift of Elohim is eternal life through Yahshua, if you walk in this word. And we're going to prove that. Let's go to Acts chapter 18. Acts chapter 18, and we're going to start with verses 1 through 4.
Acts chapter 18 and verse 1. After these things Saul departed from Athens and came to Corinth, and found a certain Yehudi named Aquila, born in Pontus, lately come from Italy, with his wife Priscilla, because that Claudius had commanded all Yehudis to depart from Rome, and came unto them. And because he was of the same craft, he abode with them, and wrought, for by their occupation they were tent makers.
Yeah, people are, this is a servant of Yahweh, yet he has a job. People be just astonished. Wow, you teach and you work too? What? Oh, wait. The whole New Testament, if it wasn't for this brother, there wouldn't be no New Testament. This brother working. But people are amazed. Wow, Isaac, you got a job. Yeah, I do. Go ahead.
And he reasoned in the synagogue every Sabbath, and persuaded the Yehudis and the Greeks.
Jump to verse 20.
When they desired him to tarry longer time with them, he consented not, but bade them farewell, saying, I must by all means keep this feast that cometh in Jerusalem.
I must by all means keep this feast. Now, this is after the birth, death, and resurrection of Christ. This is the apostle of the Euro-Gentiles, okay? So that you understand his calling, his power. He is the one that they are to listen to officially. He is the one who was officially sent. He said, I must by all means keep this feast in Jerusalem. Let's see why he might have thought that. Let's go to Exodus chapter 23. Exodus 23, and let's read verses 14 through 17.
Verse 14. 3 times you shall keep a feast unto me in the year. You shall keep the feast of unleavened bread. You shall eat unleavened bread 7 days, as I commanded you, in the time appointed of the month Abib. For in it you came out from Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty. And the feast of harvest, the first fruits of your labors, which you have sown in the field, and the feast of ingathering.
Feast of ingathering, which is tabernacles.
Which is in the end of the year, when you have gathered in your labors out of the field. 3 times in the year, all your males shall appear before Yahweh, your Elohim.
All right, now let's hear the conclusion of this matter. Let's go to Romans chapter 11. Romans chapter 11. And we're going to read verses 13 through 25. So Saul saw it necessary for him to go back, understanding that he is the teacher of these Euro-Gentiles, all the places where he is going. He understands that he himself must go back and deal with those things. Go ahead.
Verse 13. For I speak unto you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle of the Gentiles. I magnify mine office.
Right. Now, there are many people amongst the children of Israel that are teaching in various places, but they were not ordained to do so. He was. Go ahead.
If by any means I may provoke to emulation them which are my flesh, and might save some of them. For if the casting away of them be the reconciling of the world, what shall the receiving of them be, but life from the dead?
This reconciliation, this at-one-ment, this bringing back in the place, the reconciling of the world. So that means then Israel was sacrificed so that the world may be reconciled. See, this is the part that we miss. Yahshua was sacrificed for us. But when you look at all of the things that we have been made to go through, we have been sacrificed for the world. Go ahead.
For if the first fruit be holy, the lump is also holy. And if the root be holy, so are the branches. And if some of the branches be broken off, and you, being a wild olive tree, or grafted in among them, and with them partaketh of the root and fatness of the olive tree, boast not against the branches, but if you boast, you beareth not the root, but the root you.
Right, and we see that the way that this word has been taken away and taught in the manner that it is, then we see that the branches have definitely boasted against the roots. Go ahead.
You will say then, the branches were broken off that I might be grafted in. Well, because of unbelief they were broken off, and you standeth by faith. Be not high-minded, but fair.
Now, this is the apostle of the Gentiles telling this. This is their authorized teacher. Understand, when we go into Acts chapter 13, it says the Gentiles heard the word on the Sabbath day and besought that these words might be preached to them the next Sabbath day. Yet 300 years later, they have changed the Sabbath and made Sunday the official day of worship. And people accept it, even though you can't find that change anywhere in this book. Because it wasn't authorized. See, we won't let anybody change things when it's down to our earthly things. Somebody call you and say, hey, man, we're going to change the way you pay your bill. Send the money directly to this address. Wait a minute, man, who are you? No. Who says you have authorization to make that change? Yet when it comes down to our salvation, we believe anybody. They said it's changed. Who are they? Go ahead.
Romans chapter 11 and verse 21. For if Elohim spared not the natural branches, take heed, lest he also spare not you. Behold therefore the goodness and severity of Elohim. On them which fell, severity, but toward you, goodness, if you continue in his goodness.
Right. This is what we do not want to hear. Read that last verse. Last line.
Other words, you also shall be cut off.
You also shall be cut off. There's a whole doctrine that says you can't possibly lose your salvation. Now, where did they get that from? Because it didn't come out this book. Now, this is the apostle of the Euro-Gentiles. All right? He says, behold, therefore, the goodness and severity of Elohim. What people want to preach to you is the goodness of Elohim. They don't want to talk about the severity of Elohim. On them which fell, severity. But toward you, goodness. If. See, that's the biggest word in this verse. If you continue in his goodness. Otherwise, you also shall be cut off. So that totally disproves this whole thing of there's nothing you can do to lose your salvation. So let us consider these things as we prepare to take part in the atonement. Let us think about these things as we prepare to fast for even to even, a complete day of fasting. Let us think upon the things that we want to pray about. Let us have all of those things as we are fasting, that we may put ourselves in a place where Yahweh would be able to hear us. Once again, we are going to observe the atonement Tuesday night. We're going to start our broadcast at 9 p.m. But the sundown starts about 7:30. You should be finished eating by 7:30, no later than 8. Now that's Eastern time, and we will begin our Bible study the next day. We're going to do that Bible study from 5:30 to 7:30, and we will record it. So if you're not able to attend Bible study that early, then it's not a problem. You will still be able to call in or log onto the internet to hear that. That's all that we're going to do for today. Remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.